96.3 WHUR and HUR Voices, Sirius XM, Channel 141. This is the Insight segment. Your questions or comments toll free at 855-288-4876. Now, Insight.
Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM, Channel 141. This is the Insight segment. I'm Harold Fisher.
So to you other kids all across the land, there's no need to argue. Parents just don't understand.
Yes, we've heard that before. Parents don't understand their children. But years ago, that usually didn't mean that a parent-child dispute ended up in court. Well, that's not true today. We've heard about the case of 18-year-old Rachel Canning of New Jersey. The high school senior is suing her parents for financial support and college tuition. She alleges that her parents forced her out of the home and that she can't support herself. She's asking for the last semester of her high school tuition in private school, living expenses, college tuition, and legal fees. Her parents say she left because she wouldn't follow their rules. What's going on here? We're going to talk about it. Joining me to talk about this are family law attorney Michelle C. Thomas, Howard University psychologist Dr. Marcus Hummings, and Jim Mason, president of the Beach Acres Parenting Center. I know you want to get in on this conversation. The lines are open at 202-319-7810, 202-319-7810 outside of the D.C. calling area, 855-288-4876, 855-288-4876. You can follow me on Facebook at facebook.com/Harold T. Fisher or on Twitter at HFisherWHUR. Okay, everyone, let's get right into this. Michelle, I'll start with you. Sure. For those who do not know, a child, a teenager, can actually sue their parents. How is that possible?
Well, in this society that we live in, it's a very litigious society, and anyone can sue for just about anything these days. But the issue becomes whether there's any merit or validity to the lawsuit. And so from a legal perspective, this child is claiming that her parents owe her child support. However, in most jurisdictions, the law states that once you become emancipated, then the duty of support, legal duty and obligation of support by the parents terminates. So then what is emancipation?
I was about to ask. Go ahead.
Right, that's the next issue. And I find it very hard to believe and simply not persuasive nor credible that a student or a child can argue that you can move out of your parents' home, not abide by any of their rules. This child, I believe, was suspended from school in October of last year. There were truancy issues, and then still claim, but no, I'm not emancipated. No, if you decide to make a grown-up decision and move out of your parents' home, then it's time to take on grown-up responsibilities. And so that is why she lost the first round of this lawsuit, which was the request for her parents to pay for her high school tuition.
Let me go to Jim Mason. Jim, from a parenting standpoint, what's going on here? For people of a certain age, they would probably say, how dare you drag us into court over this? You're in my house, you follow my rules. Has the world changed, and what's going on with parenting?
Well, Harold, first of all, thanks for having me on.
Sure.
You're absolutely right. The world has changed dramatically. I know when probably any of us grew up, it was a lot simpler. Whatever the parents said, the school agreed with, and the courts agreed with, and your faith organizations agreed with, and so did the media. And today, kids get different messages from just about every institution in their lives in the culture that we live in today. And what we find with parents is oftentimes parents are left just really not sure exactly what to do. And we see today, unfortunately, sometimes the boundaries between the adults and the children and families get blurred, sometimes with children taking on roles that parents otherwise would have played in the old days, and parents wanting to do too much to either please their children or become their friends and not be what you say, parents to be the executives in the family. And that's a problem that lots of families face today.
And I want to talk about that a little later on in the program because you make a really good point. But Dr. Hummings, talk to me about the emotional toll that this is taking. Let's start with the parents, because as Michelle said, there were some truancy issues. Obviously, there's an issue of being suspended from school. The parents also alleged that the young lady was drinking and dating a boy that they did not approve of. And so now she's gone, whether she was kicked out or whether she left. What kind of toll does this take emotionally on parents?
Emotionally, it's going to devastate the parents. Basically, just discouragement, is going to be the bottom line. They're going to question their basic kind of ideas about what parenting is, how effective they are. They're going to take a hit as a couple because they are, going to be in conflict about what should happen with the child. Usually in that type of situation, the parents are going to disagree a lot of times about what should happen, what types of discipline should, be administered. Yeah,
and,
it can just cause ripple effects that a lot of times will separate the couples and lead to kind of the dissolve of the relationship.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Also, here's the big question: this could not have just happened overnight. Is it possible that this was coming up a long, long time ago and the parents didn't see it? And if that's the case, how could they not see it? I need to take a break. When we come back, we're going to the phone lines. 202-319-7810. 202-319-7810. Outside of the D.C. calling area, 855-288-4876. 855-288-4876. We'll be back in a moment.
And it was me, my brother, my mom, my
Doctor, you prayed for you, no charge.
Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM Channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. What do you do when your young child takes you to court? Well, that's the question we're asking tonight. My guests are family law attorney Michelle C. Thomas, Howard University psychologist Dr. Marcus Hummings, and Jim Mason, president of the Beach Acres Parenting Center in Ohio. Let me go to the phone lines. A lot of people want to get in on this. Kim, calling from Upper Marlboro, Maryland. Kim, what's on your mind?
Yes, good evening.
Hey.
First of all, I think that it should be noted that the attorney, and I would like the counselor that's on the panel to speak to this, but I find it very strange that an attorney would even take such a case. But separate from that, I'm very glad that the judge threw the case out. To me, that's a message to all youth, especially youth who aren't being neglected, who aren't being abused, but just don't want to follow the rules, that this has no grounds. It has no grounds judicially nor legally. Now, please, Harold, let one of my kids take me to court.
Why did you say that, Kim? Kim, don't mess up now. Because you know what happens when you spank them, they call 911 these days.
Let me tell you, Harold, I have given my kids the phone to call 911. And they knew better. As I did when I was a child. But let me just say this. As a youth mentor, there are children out there being abused and neglected. But I don't think that this is the way to go, nor should there even be a trend. Not to mention that this young lady has had other social problems. So with that having been said, I would like the counselor to address what would possess another counselor to take such a case. And then secondly, Harold, I commend you for bringing this topic up because we have to note that I don't know what the race of this child was. I promise you I don't. But I put my money that this probably was not an African-American child.
No, she's not. But, Michelle, could you quickly try to address her issue?
Sure. In terms of why an attorney would take such a case, I mean, there are a lot of motivations that attorneys have. Some maybe to make a name for themselves. You see that we're talking about this case today. It's been in the news, and it's the topic of today's show. So there are a lot of reasons. But I also question what kind of parent would fund this and pay for this. I don't know if you're aware, but the child's friend with whom she's living, parents are actually funding this lawsuit. And so what does that say about the greater implications of this? There was a time, once upon a time ago, where the community helped raise a child. And now you have parents put against other parents. And so you have everyone's afraid to even discipline their children anymore. And what kind of generation is this going to turn out to be?
Indeed. Kim, thank you so much for your phone call. I wanted to bring Dr. Hummings back very quickly because I only have about a minute left before I need to take yet another break. But Dr. Hummings, isn't it possible that these parents should have seen something like this coming? before it got this far?
It was a long time coming, and they would have seen it from a very young age. This is nothing new. These parents have not set limits and boundaries with their child for many, many, many years. And this is a result of that kind of lack of teaching a teenager who this is the period of time during your teen years where you learn what boundaries are, what is appropriate adult behavior, what is not. And they have not taught their child that, and this is a result of it.
Oh, well, we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but I need to take yet another break. If you are on the phone, that includes Tracy in Washington, Brenda from Rockville, Earl in Baltimore, and Harley from Bowie. Please do not hang up. You'll hear the program. The Daily Drum will continue on Sirius XM Channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. Jeff Brown is next with the original Quiet Storm on 96.3 WHUR. More on Sirius XM Channel 141 in just a bit.
For the time and the tears and the cost through the years, there is no charge.
The Howard University Radio Network is WHUR 96.3 FM, WHUR World 96.3 HD2, student-run WHBC HD3, GlassHouseRadio.com, SiriusXM Channel 142, HBCU, and SiriusXM Channel 141, HUR Voices, Washington.
Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM Channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We're asking tonight, what do you do when your young child takes you to court? My guests are family law attorney Michelle C. Thomas, Howard University psychologist Dr. Marcus Hummings, and Jim Mason, president of the Beach Acres Parenting Center. A lot of folks on the line. I promise I will get to all of you. If you can't get through, please keep trying. The phone number 202-319-7810, 202-319-7810. Outside of the D.C. calling area, 855-288-4876, 855-288-4876. I want to go back to a legal issue before I go back to the phone lines, and then I'm going to bring I'm going to bring the parenting issue up again. Okay, Michelle, explain how this whole situation is playing out now, because and this girl is she's not a minor. She is
Right.
an adult.
Correct.
And so that's a completely different issue. But let's say, just for argument's sake, that she was 17 and living with another family. And I'm not trying to be funny, but if this drags on during the course of a year where this other family is paying for her expenses, they are feeding her, they're housing her, they're clothing her, they are perhaps even paying the legal fees. Do they claim her on their income taxes? I mean, to whom does this child belong legally?
Right, and that's a really good point in terms of income taxes and the other implications. So I think we've got two issues. One, the fact that she's 17 versus 18 doesn't really matter in this instance. Parents have a legal duty to support their children if they are still in high school until they turn age 19. So that is the issue, is that she's still in high school. She's still a senior in high school. And so therefore she's seeking support. However, the exception to that is if you are emancipated. And so in this situation where she's voluntarily chosen to live elsewhere, the issue of emancipation becomes a concern. Now, if the parents with whom she's living, or the friend's parents with whom she's living, want to seek some sort of support from the biological parents because they're footing the bill or they want to seek the tax implications, then they would need to try to file some sort of papers in court in order to get that right, because you can't just spend the night over a friend's home and then suddenly, that changes the legal relationship between the parties here. So that's a conversation that, quite frankly, the friend's parents would have to have with the biological parents in terms of who was going to benefit from the tax deduction for this child.
Oh, gosh, that's so messy. Jim, talk to me a little bit about discipline, because Dr. Humming said, the teen years, obviously a very critical point in the development of a child when you're talking about, setting boundaries. But is this the point at which you could actually see a teen, as he or she moves to adulthood, fly or fall? And where do you think these parents have dropped the ball, if indeed they have?
A great question. The first thing I want to do is go back and underscore what Dr. Humming said about issues like this begin in early childhood, and I think that the first thing that parents need to do is get really clear early on when a child is little about what are the very specific core values they want their children to learn. And write them down. I want my child to have self-control. I want my child to be kind to other children. I want my child to have courage, the ability to overcome hardship, and those kinds of things. And then opportunities arise all along the way to teach those, mostly by letting kids fail, picking them up and dusting them off, and helping them to learn from their experiences. And when kids don't get that opportunity when they become teenagers, because they've never failed, because parents have bailed them out all along the way, they don't have the ability to control themselves and to manage their emotions and that type of thing. I think one of the best things you can do for a teenager is to let them experience, as Dr. Hummings would agree, the natural consequences of their behavior. Absolutely. That is very, very difficult for parents to do today because we all want our children to be happy and to have all the things that we didn't have or to have what the kid next door has. And we raise our kids a lot out of guilt, which is not a very good idea. We need to raise our kids as the executive in the family, and our job as parents is to teach and guide them to learn the values that are most important to us.
Let me go back to the phone lines. Earl calling from Baltimore. What's on your mind, Earl?
Hey, good evening. How are you and your guests tonight?
Doing just fine. Go right ahead.
Good. I was calling because it sounded like an interesting topic, and usually in cases such as this, in my opinion, is you can tell a lot about the litigants by the character of the people involved. And the way I see it is any person that would drag their parents into court over something like this shows a lack of character. And if the person shows a lack of character, then it would indicate a weak case, in my opinion. As the previous caller said, if the person is not being abused or neglected or otherwise in any case mentally or physically violated by the parents, then it seems like a weak case, and I'm surprised that any judge would, any court would even take it. Now, I work with kids. I'm a teacher, and I do see when I speak to many parents a problem with a problem in our society in many cases with parents wanting to befriend their kids, and I know this has been brought up in your show previously. A lot of times I'm questioned, a lot of time I'm interrogated when I speak to parents. There's a lot of defense on behalf of the children's inappropriate actions, and so the more I speak to more and more parents, the more I'm seeing why more and more kids are growing up with more of a disrespectful attitude towards authority and towards their own parents even. So it's not surprising in the world we live in, and from what I've seen, even dealing with kids on an everyday basis. So, and as far as your question goes about whether there were signs, I'm sure there were. But another thing I've noticed is that a lot of parents live in a constant state of denial, where even if the signs are present, they just consistently ignore them because they don't want to believe that the signs are there. So I think that may have been a factor in this case also.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Earl. What do you think about that, Dr. Hummings? Parents, are they in a state of denial?
I do believe that some are. There are often times also where parents just don't know what to do, and they feel like their children are kind of out of control, and they kind of run out of options. So the parents kind of flail, and they really don't know what to do.
So what are the long-term implications of this emotionally? I would imagine that at this point, it's got to take, gosh, how do you repair something like this? This is obviously at the very beginning of this, but I'm talking about when you're looking at the relationship between the parents and this child. Can this be repaired, or is this child, by virtue of the fact that she has in one way, shape, or form taken it upon herself to take these extreme measures, are they done? in simple terms.
No, I don't think they're done, but they do have to go through the process of going all the way back to where that child was injured. She's a very injured woman.
Why do you say that?
Oh,
Why do you say she's injured?
Because all of the acting out behavior is essentially anger at the parents. So oftentimes when you see kids acting out sexually, drugs, so on and so forth, it's going to be anger, it's going to be depression, it's going to be some kind of anxiety. But I believe from her behavior, it's a lot of anger that is tied up in there, some of the other emotions as well. But this is a child that feels like she's cheated, that feels like her parents have been unfair to her. And there was some type of injury that happened where she felt like this type of behavior was warranted and justified. And so that's how she's gotten to the point where this is okay behavior. Her parents deserve it. And this is what I can do because they did me foul whenever it was.
Michelle, were you about to say something?
Yeah. So, Dr. Hummings, I hear your position, but could it simply be that she is a spoiled brat who has been given everything in life, who simply doesn't want to live or abide by her parents' rules? Because I understand that in this circumstance, there is a boyfriend that's on the scene. Her parents were not fond of this boyfriend and wanted her to sort of pull away from that relationship around October of last year when all this began to unravel. So could she simply be a teenager who wants to do what she wants to do when she wants to do it? And that's sort of how they arrived at this point. And her parents, to the contrary, did put their foot down and say, no, in order to live in this household, you will abide by my rules. I certainly heard that growing up in my day.
And you didn't sue your parents.
Right, and I did not sue didn't even cross my mind.
You just waited until you got a job to do that.
And
well, there you go.
There you go.
Well, absolutely. She could feel that way, but it would be an instance where the parents did not set limits and boundaries. I mean, what we're all talking about is our parents oftentimes set a limit and boundary. If you did whatever, you were going to get whatever. And that wasn't in place. So she feels like this is what I want. I can go and do it. I've never experienced disappointment. And so now the parents are trying to implement some type of boundary. And she, for the first, they've probably done so previously.
But perhaps maybe they acted too late?
Yeah, essentially. And the feeling of disappointment, she can't tolerate. So she's going to continue to press because she feels justified in the behavior.
Let me go back to the phone lines. Tracy calling from Washington, D.C. What's on your mind?
Hi, this is Tracy. I'm calling because I'm not clearly understanding where a child gets to come into someone else's home. What's going on in that home that she can do that she can't do in her own home that would make her want to leave her parents who's probably given her everything and anything she's asked for? And outside of that, what judge would allow another family to take a child from their home? If they're not abusive and neglective parents, this family should be held accountable for allowing this runaway, because that's what she is. She's a runaway child. And for letting her run to someone else's home, they should be prosecuted because they shouldn't have opened their door unless they got permission from those parents to do so. Now, if her home is that bad, she should have reported them to the police and let her household get investigated, but not drag her family through something because another family wants to be greedy.
But see, here's the thing, Tracy, and I think two of my guests can answer the different parts of your question. But the parents are saying that she left. She is saying the parents kicked her out. So right there, you have two different arguments on that question of why is she out of the house. The other, that's the first thing. The other thing is, and it's my understanding that there is a parent in the other house, not parents, just a man. So I first of all, I want Jim to help me out with that, because if that's the case, if there is just a man and her friend, the girl in question, her friend, what's going on with him? Dad. Yeah, what kind of relationship does this man have with? Hold on, Tracy, my show, honey. We'll get it out. what kind of relationship does this man have with his daughter? What kind of relationship does he have with with Rachel Canning? Help me with that, Jim. Should we be wondering who this dad is, this other dad?
Well, Harold, I don't know about that. I do feel what Tracy's saying, though, in terms of what happens sometimes with parents in terms of they're not supporting each other, and parents can get swayed by a kid's argument. One thing we do know, though, in this case, she is 18 and she can go wherever she wants legally, and I think Michelle would back that up. But in terms of the other parent not supporting this one, he's got his own motives for it, which are impossible to know for sure. But I think it is a case where these parents, the girl's parents, need to stand up for what they believe in and be really clear with him about what they would expect from him.
And Michelle, the whole legal piece about how this happens in the first place, is that what you were asking, Tracy?
No, what I'm saying is that if the child is 18, well, she's really a young adult. She's
Correct.
18. If she chose to leave their home, yes, it's going to be hard on the parents, but I am a mother whose child did the same exact thing. I hope they're listening to know that this child is going to go into the world, and whatever they've taught her, she's either going to learn from it or she's going to come back again to be taught, because mine came back home. Because they're going to get in this world and find out that whether the father of her girlfriend has motives, her daughter, if they taught her right, will eventually see those motives, and she will get tired, and she will come back home to be nurtured again. But at 18, there's not a whole lot you can do, but I don't see where any parent, if a child chooses to leave, should have to be financially responsible for her.
Okay, well, Tracy, thank you. I've got to take a break. I appreciate your passion and your phone call. When we come back, Brenda and Harley will be back in just a bit. Channel 141, I'm Harold Fisher. We're asking tonight, what do you do when your young child takes you to court? Let me go back to the phone lines. Brenda, calling from Rockville. What's on your mind, Brenda?
Yes, Harold, and to the guests. I just wanted to say, because it's not really a question, but parenting, because I am a parent as well as a grandparent, and fortunately I did not have my children when I was teenage or in my teens, which, that hadn't been brought up either, that, even the maturity level of the parents when they had this child. I know that sometimes the first child is the first child. In other words, you learn almost, because I am a child as the first child and so I know. The other thing is that no one's brought up the fact that, to me, I feel like you can't have it both ways. We have elected to say, okay, 17 or 18, depending on what state the child is mature or free or whatever you want to call it. But yet we know scientifically, it is proven now, we know it, that 25 years old, the brain has not even stopped learning cognitive skills and all of that until you're about 25 years old. The other thing is that you took up a really emotional situation, and I'm glad, actually. I hate that things happen like this, but I am glad that at least it brought it out for dialogue, because unless we have dialogue with involving especially adolescents, which is it's a trying time. You cannot be weak at heart just to have a child, but especially adolescents. It's tedious. I know even myself as a professional, I've been an RN, so I can see it personally and professionally by being, seeing a lot of things, working in mental health. The reason why I cannot really make a judgment is I feel there could be extenuating circumstances. We do not know all of the circumstances enough, but we do know that a person that is 18 years of old, their brain is just still not cognitively. They're still developing. Their brain is still developing.
Yeah, but Brenda, let me say this. So that sounds like an excuse.
No, it's not an excuse.
No, think about it. Okay, you're 18 years old. Why don't we see a whole a whole host of 18-year-olds taking their parents to court. And I think that, at 18, yes, legally, you are an adult. You may not have finished growing physically, emotionally, mentally, but just because you're 18 years old, the law suggests that you are cognizant of what you're doing. And we don't know all of the extenuating circumstances or even if there are any, but with all of the other things that this young lady has alleged in court, the one thing that she has not alleged is abuse. She hasn't.
Right. I agree. I can understand that, but what I cannot go along with is just because she has done it, that no other young person has thought to do it. I mean, I'm out here, and I've been approached by, it doesn't even matter about the race, because young people come, they just feel free enough to come and at least express themselves. To me, that was happening when I was raising mine.
Express themselves in what way?
In every way, in every way that could be expressed, as far as like adolescence, where they're the next stage is young adulthood, where they feel their parents are not listening. But then you have to be able to separate not listening to an extreme of emotional abuse, because a lot of times what we think there's a fine line between the emotional abuse. We know about mental abuse. Yeah. We know about physical abuse. But we don't know about all of that. And I would say because we're evolving as human beings, we do not have it all, know it all, be it all, or whatever.
Okay, hold on. Let me let Dr. Hummings in with this, because I don't have a psychology degree, but I'm going to have to tell you I completely disagree with that. I just don't think that just because you've only lived 18 years of age and you haven't developed fully, that you're going to do something which I would say is just crazy. I mean, a woman just posted on my Facebook page. She said she can't imagine doing this unless her parents thought she had lost her mind. And she says that this is an example of less parenting and children with too much outside influence. I believe that has more to do with what this young lady has done, as opposed to not completely developing mentally. Dr. Hummings, please.
I would agree with that. I agree that she is still developing cognitively, her decision making, but she has a lot of foundation to be making some solid decisions at this time. The issue is that she has never kind of learned. She hasn't had the experience of being disappointed, let down, backed up, and everything else that goes along with the hierarchy in a parental environment. And so she's filled with entitlement, privilege. She doesn't know where boundaries are, and she's feeling as if she has just as much decision-making and parental rights as her parents do. Yeah. And that's the issue and distortion that she has and carries. And yes, I believe that it was a parenting kind of error in a way, where they didn't teach those limits and boundaries. But this is a child that has reacted in a way where she's just expressing a tremendous amount of anger towards her parents.
In other words, I want what I want, and if you don't give me what I want, I'm going to do what I need to do to get what I want.
Absolutely.
There you go. Thank you, Brenda. Let me go to Harley calling from Bowie. Go ahead, Harley.
Yes, my comment was simply this. It all starts, we can take it all the way back, but it's a social issue. As soon as you took out discipline out of the homes, you took discipline out of the school, these kids are running wild. They're running rampant, and there are no consequences for their actions. They're in school, they get suspended. They go home, they get their classwork while they're on suspension. When I was in school, if you got suspended, you don't get the classwork. You get zeros. And if you don't do it, if you don't get enough points, then you fail that class or you might stay back. They don't do that anymore. So now the kids get 15, 16, 17. They know that you can't touch them. If you touch them, they can call the police. And so now you got kids think they're on the same level as the parent, and they think that they can come at you and speak to you and negotiate with you, and they can't.
Yeah.
Kids, not to the fact that I'm not saying, to me, there's a big line between abuse and discipline. And the thing is this: if we keep using the word abuse, they make everything abuse. Everything's not abuse. Some things are just life lessons. And we keep shielding these kids, and then when something happens, they break down. They don't know how to act. I personally believe the belt didn't hurt me. When I was young, I wasn't on Ritalin, but I was hyper in class. I ran around and did everything else. But you know what I did know? I know that if I got a paddle at school, they called my mom. I got paddled when I got home. My mom called my aunts and my uncles. If I did something too bad, they came over and beat me. So I had to figure out at a young age, we're talking about 3rd grade, 4th grade, if what I was going to do was worth the consequences of my actions. And right now, these teenagers have no consequences for their actions, so they do whatever.
All right.
Let's bring back corporal punishment.
Well, Harley, well said. Thank you so much. I'm running low on time. I'll start with Jim. Jim, how do we prevent this kind of thing from happening to other families? What piece of advice can you give?
Well, Harold, the thing that I would say, and I think it sums up this last part of the conversation, we need more parenting and less outside influence. And the only way to get that is for parents to stand up and become the executives in their family, which is what parents are supposed to do, not the friends of their children. And today's parents, I think, in many ways have a hard time doing that. And I think that Harley said it and Dr. Hummings has said it, and it's been said by your Facebook person. We need more parenting and less outside influence, and parents are the ones who can make that happen.
So friendly, but not necessarily friends.
Yes, exactly. I think that's a very good way of putting it.
Okay, Dr. Hummings, from your perspective, what advice do you give parents and even teenagers if they're going through severe crises at home and they seem to be at wit's end?
Well, first, the communication lines have to be opened, but teenagers have to understand that you should be treated as an adult, but your behavior is going to be expected as a younger person. And that is the way in which you kind of learn to negotiate life in an appropriate manner and learn responsibility. The second is that somebody has to hear your feelings as the child. The parents have to be kind of empathic to understand from their perspective how they're feeling, so that you can go about teaching them how to approach life in a kind of appropriate manner.
Okay, Michelle, I'll let you have the last word.
Sure. One of your callers raised the point initially, which is what type of attorney would take this case, and I responded saying, and what type of parent would fund it? Now, I don't know the ins and outs of this particular case in terms of, other than what I've read about it. I don't know the nature of the relationship, the details between client and counsel. What I will do is challenge my fellow colleagues to sort of consider whether this is a case that needs to be taken and brought before a court, and whether you are creating a slippery slope and what is at the end of that slope if you are instrumental in creating it. So I would just challenge my colleagues to really think about each case and what the greater implications are before they say, yes, I'll take this case to court.
Well said. I want to thank Michelle C. Thomas, Dr. Marcus Hummings, and Jim Mason. Thank you all so much. Interesting conversation. I hope someone gained something from it. That is the Daily Drum on Sirius XM Channel 141 for this Thursday, March 6th. I'm Harold Fisher.